one of the organizers for LA Zine Fest. Welcome to the panel known as Zines and Queer Inclusive Expression. I always get those two words mixed up. For today, your moderator will be Chynna, and I'll let Chynna take it from here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to our panel. We are recording this for future use, so you know. But I hope that you are enjoying your time at home and are comfortable. And I'm just going to quickly go over the agenda for today. So I'm going to start out with some introductions, short bios on all of the panelists, including myself. I'm going to set some intentions for this panel and just create a warm space for everybody. And then I'm also going to go over some Brave Space guidelines that I got from Dana. Thank you for sending those to me. And then we'll get into the questions and then wrap up with a Q&A. So I'm just going to jump right in. I'm going to introduce Chynna first. So let's welcome Chynna. Thanks for joining us. Chynna was born in Southeast LA in the city of Linwood. Daniel Chynna Rodriguez is a co-creator of Neta Zine. Since 2014, Neta Zine has been dedicated to archiving queer ephemera. The archive is a mix of pop cultural references, queer art, history, gay memes, performances at queer spaces like Club Scum, and sound bites. They are known for popping up, displaying, and making art. Celebrating inclusion, Neta Zine has made art with many queer artists, such as Ruben Esparza, Joey Terrell, Moni Nunez, and Taco Guyen. More recently, Neta Zine makes party decorations with cyber fantasy for the monthly Basura party hosted by Adam Reyes.
Hey, everybody.
Chynna. I met Chynna actually through Cynthia at a RESO workshop. And, you know, they've been awesome.
We've been friends ever since.
Yeah, of course, in my life. So thank you. Next, I'm going to introduce Cynthia. Cynthia Navarro is an artist, printer, and publisher in LA. She helps run Tiny Splendor, which you may have heard of, small publishing and print project based in LA and Berkeley. Tiny Splendor mostly publishes zines and print editions, which are mostly illustrative-based works. So everyone say hi to Cynthia.
Hello, everyone.
Cynthia frequently does pretty rad RESO workshops. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely hit her up. I don't know when you'll be starting those again in person, but maybe like a Zoom thing. I don't know.
I don't know about that, but maybe next year's when, you know, Rona kind of calms down and can invite people back into the studio.
Sure.
But yeah, email info@Tiny Splendor if you would like to be added to the mailing list.
Awesome. Next, I'm going to introduce Dana. Dana Variano is a non-binary visual artist and filmmaker working for compassion and human rights, directing creative campaigns for nonprofits, and biking LA from valley to ocean. As a communications professional, their pen and ink-based artwork explores the loneliness and disconnection they experience in modern life as a gender non-conforming person. If you haven't seen Dana's drawings, definitely check them out. They were in the art show We Rise. So everybody say hi to Dana.
So happy to be here. Good to see y'all.
I'm going to introduce Etsy. Etsy is an Afro, Siksika, Pinay, trans, multimedia cultural worker. Her work entails political education while providing material support to marginalized and colonized communities. Creating art and media for the sake of propagating resistance culture, counter-narrative, and collective liberatory projects that spark discourse, sources of healing, critical thought, dialogue, and direct action. Etsy is an amazing resource for information, and they deserve all the applause. So welcome me in introducing them.
Hi.
Yay.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I'll just say a little bit about myself. My name is Chynna. I'm a Virgo sun, Pisces moon, which means I'm a freaky, organized Velma on the outside, but on the inside, I'm constantly crying. Just kidding. There's my cat, by the way. I'm a Mexican Guatemalan, born in Alaska and raised in LA. So, ni de aquí, ni de allá, ni de allá, ni de allá, I like to say, because there's so many lands there and different identities. I mostly do freelance design work. I also work for a nonprofit, and the majority of my zines are photo zines, and they're based in identity and ties to land. And just to kind of give a background on this panel, you know, I wanted to start this and kind of brought it up with Dana, and Dana helped me because I really wanted to just dedicate this time to the community that, specifically the queer community that I found through zines, that has been really open to me and just opened my eyes to so many perspectives and really given me the space to be myself, which, you know, I'm eternally grateful for. So next up, I just want to welcome a warm space for everybody. I hope all of my friends here are feeling good. And also just acknowledge that LA Zine Fest takes place in LA, known as Tongue of the Land. And aside from just making a land acknowledgement, I also really want to extend support. So what I'll be doing is, after this panel, I'll be posting a list of resources and fundraisers and efforts that folks can donate to really give back. So, and you can find that on Instagram. And so lastly, before we jump in, I just want to set some rules and also mention that, you know, there may be some triggering things. So, you know, we may get into talking about bullying or harassment. So I just want to throw out a trigger warning in case, you know, that's necessary. And I'm just going to go over some guidelines really quickly about having a brave space. So number one, we're welcoming multiple viewpoints. I'm hoping that everybody is speaking from their own experiences and using I statements. I'm going to assume that folks have positive intentions and are not intentionally causing harm. I'm also going to wish that everybody respect each other's experiences and feelings by taking responsibility for the effects of their words. So if you have a strong reaction to something, you know, I'm speaking to panelists here, please let us know. Fourth is work to recognize your privileges. So use this space to recognize and investigate your privileges. For example, race, class, gender, sexual orientation, ability. Honor the different experiences we all bring to this space and the table. Number 5, take risks, lean into discomfort. We're all in process. And I think to add to that, we're all healing and we're all learning constantly. We're all evolving and shifting. So I think that's a beautiful thing. Um, Number 6, step up, but also step back. So share your speaking time with folks, and if they haven't spoken, and if you haven't spoken, try to step forward and share. And the last thing I'm going to go over is, actively listen. Use your energy to listen to what each person is speaking about. Think about what they're saying. And just take that with care. So thank you for hearing those out. Again, just going to go over what we're going to talk about today. So this description of our panel is, for the queer art space to be truly representative, it must be inclusive, an environment which calls in, listens, and unites. One which accepts people on spectrums of gender and sexuality and lifts each other up. In this panel discussion, we're going to talk about what it's like to be a queer artist sharing pieces in an increasingly online world, and how zines are a key form of expression for our community. All right, everybody, have an icebreaker first. Loosen you up. Panelists, what is your favorite ice cream flavor? And if you don't like ice cream, what's your favorite karaoke song? Dana?
Well, liking ice cream is not an issue. Picking one flavor might be, I think, original chocolate chip. I don't know why I say original, but to me, it's the classic since childhood. And I always stray to more complex flavors, but then come back to that one.
Cynthia?
My go-to ice cream is salted caramel or mint chip, for sure.
Etsy?
I think mine would have to be raspberry chocolate chunk graters. Really good.
Chino?
Okay, favorite ice cream. I love Rite Aid's cotton candy ice cream. I also do love like Ben and Jerry's Chunky Monkey ice cream. Can I also answer my favorite karaoke song though? I would have to do Janet Jackson's Control.
Definitely. That's a great song. Thank you.
Thanks.
Also, by the way, I don't have to call each person out. Feel free to just jump in. All right, so here's our first question. In what ways have zines played a role in lifting up your expression and your identity?
Who's gonna go first?
I know, right?
I'm shy.
Yeah, let's trying to think. How's it played a role? It's kind of like swept me off my feet, starting off. I would say like 8 years ago, just making zines and it's just an expression of yourself. I don't personally make that many zines anymore, like of my own artwork, but the role that it takes in now is like kind of collaborating and kind of building a artist and publisher relationship with the artist. And I think seeing that creative fulfillment and has just really yeah, has really like become extremely part of something in my life recently. Just that relationship building with the artist, and um, in terms of like identity, it's like yeah, the means of like collaborating and like building something meaningful together. Um, I think has been a really, really big part of like what Tiny Splendor is about, and like whom also me as the person that is like in charge of production has taken role in my life recently. Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure if I answered that right. I got a little nervous.
There's no wrong answer.
You're doing amazing, sweetie.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of new to the world of making zines. Started earlier or late last year. But I've been reading zines for a while, and I think they're the first. It's the place in the bookstore where I know that I can walk in and sort of see myself represented and hear from folks that I don't think I'd be able to necessarily hear their voice, because it might have been prevented by like other gatekeepers in industries, economic reasons, all the reasons people can't get published. And so I think it's just been a place where I've really seen some amazing art, and it feels very private and personal. Also, it feels very I don't know what it is about a zine, but it feels like they're talking just to you. And so I found that really cool. And also, yeah, I think the collaborative process of making them is something that is also really inspiring community-wise.
Yeah, I hear that about feeling like zines really speak to you on a personal level. Like, I mean, in a similar way as books do, but something about the soul that goes into making a zine too really reinforces that.
I love that. That sounds so good. Yeah, part of me making zines started in college. I took an illustration class, and that was like my final project. And at the time, I was like little queer art baby, fresh out of college, and making art was something that I was doing consistently. And so the zine gave me a platform to like post my work. I would like send them to my friends, and then I eventually started signing them.
I also started reading zines and simultaneously making them like 8 years ago. Some of the first zine kind of collective collaboration that I helped like in creating or putting together was the Los Angeles Queer Resistance zine. And it was just really amazing that we can circumvent the kind of conventional ideas of opting into like distribution, and we could just make a thing ourselves. And it also allowed me to explore like who I was and what I was doing in relationship to like the movement work that I opted into at the time, and like how the zine was kind of created to carve a kind of queer and trans, like, and gender nonconforming space for people who didn't really feel seen and heard. So it was really special. for me opting into it, because like I also like identified for the first time as like a gender nonconformist person, and I think back then I also identified as like asexual because I wasn't really comfortable with like my body, and I mean I'm a hoe now, but like
Hey.
yeah, I did really yeah, it was just like really, so it helped me work through my gender dysphoria and transition and all that. So
I see some folks in the chat. That's a big mood. All right. So Cynthia, you mentioned, that collaborative process, and this kind of ties into like my next question, which is, in what ways have zines played a role in uniting with your community? And, what kinds of bonds have you created from that, or opportunities?
It's opened up a lot of doors for me, and the other folks of Tiny Splendor, definitely. Just from just shooting the shit, partying, to like what it is now. It's such a blessing. And who I've met throughout the years, and like who I constantly meet, and also the opportunity to travel with Zines and meet other people in different countries has been like, it's been amazing. Just meeting like-minded people that enjoy printed material, something tactile, something I don't know, that you can collect, or something you can read and learn and enjoy. Like I mentioned earlier, the connection that I build with the artist in creating either a print edition or a publication or a zine or an artist book, I like to really invest my time in getting to know the person. So it's like in that individual one-on-one bond that I try to create. It's very important for me, and I think it's important for the artist too. Like, we can both create something that can be something meaningful and strong for both of us. And let's say like the zine community, like just that one day going into that weekend, it's always kind of, it's fun. Sometimes it can be very exhausting. But it's nice to just walk in and see the same faces, and just like once a year check in with people and just see what they have been making, and it's always like a wonderful thing to see every year. Unfortunately, this year, things are happening, but yeah, I think that's what it has done over the years for me, for sure.
Hear that. I'm gonna start calling people out.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking directly to Cynthia.
This is for everybody.
Oh, okay. Well, for me, especially with Netazine, so many opportunities, whether it's like vending at swap meets, at like spaces like Descontrol or Ultimate for the Arcoiris Marketplace. A lot of art events, like celebrating artists' work. For me, like zines have really like bridged together my community, or at least how I see my community. And looking back, like the zines that I've made are like this is what my community looked like, you know, in 2016, 2017, and it's nice to see like the images sort of blossom into what it becomes.
Kind of like a timestamp almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It is very much its own kind of archive of like, yeah, things that you're doing personally or collaboratively. I'm not sure I remember what was the question again?
The question is, in what ways have zines played a role in uniting with your community, and what kinds of bonds or opportunities have been created from that?
I think there have been like really strong bonds and just different collaborations that a lot of, like with LAQR, what I appreciated about it was its sense of like focusing and centering on the individual, but in relationship to the collective, and how it was just really magical how like we would kind of formulate ideas and foment resistance through those ideas, like, you know, collectively we created like a zine banner, and like I don't know if like Ria remembers us like marching into one of their Zine Fests with a zine banner and just distributed the zines for free to people, and just things like that, or like just the issue of like cis heteronormativity and patriarchy, and always like making sure we're confronting that. So like what I appreciate about the zines that we were collectively doing is like we were creating but collectively, and like feeding off of each other's ideas, but also countering specific like structures of power that we thought were maybe oppressive or problematic, but also like acknowledging that like we, you know, I know this space is like talking about inclusivity, but also posing the idea of like, well, what does it mean to be included into these kinds of like oppressive power structures that have historically isolated and even genocided some of us, like, you know, in lieu of assimilationist kind of politics and wanting to opt into like the state, or like even marriage, or even like the war machine that is the military, just kind of like giving examples of like, well, you can opt into whatever oppressive institution you want to, but we can still criticize the role of that institution. So hoping that these things kind of spark critical thought and dialogue. And it was really great how like they kind of progressed into more radical ideas throughout the years, and kind of yeah, in a really beautiful way that was like unapologetic. And I think like Cynthia, like I don't really make too many zines these days, only because of like the reality of like burnout and things like that. But I still definitely distribute like some of the old article or the old issues that we have, because I think they're still very poignant, and like reminding us that to not forget about those kinds of ideas and efforts, you know.
Mm-hmm. Are you still connected with that community?
Yeah, I'm still connected with a lot of the people that we're making zines with, you know. Some people opted out because like they might not have, in terms of like the radical politics that we were kind of like trying to be trying to like foment and create and cultivate. But like I keep thinking about like if like if we didn't, if some of us, like, I think about like Ria's like relationship, for example, to the LA Zine Fest, and like how if Ria didn't like invite some of us to like be artists in residence at a space, and if we weren't like critical of the space itself, like there's certain, like I think we created a what is it, a kind of like conversation on displacement and like gentrification, and we were also not just doing zines, we were also doing like things like cop watch and feeding people, and so like within some of these processes we kind of called for like an assembly of sorts, and like and that turned into like the LA Tenants Rights Union, for example. And like I think some of these histories are often maybe like overlooked or like undervalued based on like, you know, who we were as like queer, trans, radical people of color. But yeah, I think that those things are like kind of in, you know, those conversations are like in the zines, you know.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that, you know, at the very root of zines and creating zines is this, you know, this radical, just DIY way of disseminating information. And, you know, it's pretty amazing where that can go. How about you, Dana? I know zines are kind of new in terms of community for you, but how has it been so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think I started off making zines partially because of the community. And you, Chynna, I blame Masha for my addiction to zine making at the moment. But I think I found the community wholly supportive, which is just really refreshing and different than other communities I've been a part of, even in the art world. So I think it's just been really respectful and intentional. And I think what you said is exactly spot on. It's sort of like the root of it, and like who chooses to make a zine and why, right? It goes back to that like instinct of that like I was doing as a kid, and like writing newsletters and like giving them to my brothers to say like, here's what's up. And you know, the work I I like work doing communications and digital advocacy, which is often very frustrating because I have to like work within messaging guidelines and branding structures. And I think zines and other forms of art are just a really great way to express what you really want to say. And I think in that form, more than most forms, you get a lot of pure truth from a lot of people that I think otherwise I wouldn't hear from. And I really want to.
Yeah.
So that's been really cool.
Rad. I'm gonna flip it a little bit now. Did you want to say something, Etsy?
Oh, I just wanted to check in with the ASL interpreter, if they're, how would they feel about switching out? Is it okay with them? I just wanted to. Are they good?
We're good.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm going to switch it up a little bit and kind of go into a little bit of what you mentioned, Etsy, about, you know, creating discussions and bringing discussions about displacement and, you know, the opposite, which is, you know, in what ways have you seen the community divisive or be hostile, if you've experienced that ever?
Me specifically, like the zine community, or the?
I'd say specifically, I guess an overlap of the zine and the queer zine community, because, you know, we have the zine community as a whole, which is like so encompassing over so many genres, but specifically queer zine community.
You know what? I still kind of fucks heavy with the queer zine community. Like I think throughout the like decade of like organizing and things, I think for me, I've always been making zines that were congruent with my praxis, and or like, for example, like printing other people's zines for free. Like if we had access to free printing, for example, then like why would we sell the zines? I pay to make my zines now, but I still, they're like donation. If you want to donate, you can, and I think that's a good way to circumvent like the capitalist market. And it's like, instead of charging, you know, I'll just make it like, you know, whatever anyone wants to donate at the time, or trading. But I also am like, yeah, I still fucks heavy with some of the people who are in like the queer and zine queer zine scene. But it's been, I think it I think it's changed a lot. Like looking at I'm like so gagging at like the LA Zine Fest, because it used to be so different. And like I just remember, you know, the second you're going to it, it was just so like white, to be honest. And like that was kind of, and then also seeing apolitical zines, I had no idea that those were like a thing until I actually went to the Zine Fest. And I think I think just people like learning as they're going, and that's okay. You know, I don't want to completely shun people who may not have been at a space or a mindset, but like have transformative experiences that help them recognize like that, yeah, this kind of like work is not, it's not insular, and we're all kind of learning from it. But I did want to say that yeah, I just appreciate some of the strong bonds that I've made over the years. And like there's been like, I think the overarching issue has always been patriarchy, like has always been cis heteronormativity, has always been like queer and trans people of color not having the resources to live, or specifically like Black trans women being killed for like just being. And I think, yeah, I think like right now it's an interesting time, because like, you know, in what ways are we trying to navigate like all of those things, but also like reconcile like our issues.
Right.
Because if you don't, it's like you can be like, oh, people are identity politicians and play identity politics all day, but like what do you all have in place that resolves issues in your community? Because if you're just like kicking whatever issue comes aside, or comes to you, and just calling it identity politics without having like some sort of structure in place to deal with these issues, then like what are you really doing? So that's just my tea without getting into the tea.
I want to do a quick poll of folks that are here watching. Have you had, you know, what has your experience been in terms of negative or positive within the zine community? And, you know, feel free to comment in the chat, just if it's mostly been uniting, or if you've found that in some ways zines have been cliquey, or even just not what you're expecting. Does anyone else want to speak on their experiences with that? No? Come on, y'all. All right. All right, so I'll move on to talking a little bit more about the digital aspect of this. Um, but I see comments here. Uniting. I felt overwhelmed. Not too involved. But there are many niche areas, very positive, for sure. So shifting gears a little bit and talking about the digital space that we're in right now, especially with the stay-at-home orders. What changes have you seen with art being shared online or zines, and how has it changed the zine community in that sense? And to extrapolate on that a little bit, like, have you had a good experience with going digital, or has it been kind of negative?
Well, I started putting my drawings online like 2 years ago, partially because I was so frustrated. As I said, I work in the social media space. I was so frustrated with what is put on there that I was like, let me see if I can inject any semblance of authenticity or honesty into this space for myself. Like, even looking at my own Instagram feed, I was just like, how is anybody supposed to look at this pretty picture and know that I'm having an anxiety attack? And so I think I sort of started the experiment a little earlier than some people who are diving in now, sort of because we have to. Overall, I found the online space like surprisingly, I guess positive is a word. I've had a ton of negative experiences, but they're definitely outweighed by the amount of sort of like magical, interesting connections I found online. Definitely more recently, I've just noticed a trend toward suddenly mental health matters to everybody, which is cool, I guess, but also a bit frustrating for those of us who have been like trying to get folks to realize that for a long time and have been like told that it doesn't exist. And so I think I've seen a lot of sort of brands getting in on the like art, emotional, trying to like imitate that authenticity in a way. That's just something I'm noticing and is not jiving with me. But I'm loving the fact that like a lot of artists who weren't online before are like going online, and that's decreasing barriers for like ticket prices and flying places and sort of what people can see and have access to, as long as we figure out the big digital access issue that we have going on.
Agreed.
I think in terms for me, like Neta Zine has been like, it started off as like a digital space. It started on Instagram, and earlier, like I would invite artists to come and they would display their art, and usually like I picked artists that were, a little controversial, often getting censored on Instagram for their artwork, and allowing them to come and display their art without any kind of like flagging. I mean, obviously that happens like when you get followers, from any like people that you're not familiar with. But in terms of like a digital space, I totally see it as something uniting, in terms of like connectivity and branching, especially for me, like knowing that there's so many queer people all over the world. That's so like relieving, at least for me. And it's nice to know that people are making art. It's nice to know that people are taking selfies. It's cool to like see like how people are living so that you can learn how to communicate with them. And now like this is what we're accustomed to. Like I don't know if we would ever revert to not being digital. It's kind of hard when we're all putting our information out there, and you know being off the grid is kind of hard.
It is hard. I feel like it's also sometimes necessary in a way too. Um, we end up needing to find that balance, and yeah. Cynthia, you want to add?
Sure, but can you repeat the question, please, so I can have it a little bit more fresh?
I'm also just going to do a quick time check because it's 7:50. But
Okay, I'll keep it short.
so the question was,
Take your time.
yeah, take your time. We're not rushing you. But with a lot of things have become digital now, especially because of, stay-at-home orders, and just kind of talking about changes you've seen or any comments you want to make on how you see art being shared online, or like zines changing and being shared online, or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen good things, and I've also seen also the struggle too, of like my personal struggle to be creative and motivated, and also being gentle with myself about things that are going on now. And but I being talking to people and just expressing that. It just seems like a lot of artists right now struggle with that. But it's always like a good reminder that everything's okay. Like, you don't have to be productive. You don't have to put things out there if it's not the right time right now. I think that's one thing, definitely, what I've been noticing right now, personally, and with other artists that I work with, or just people that I communicate with. I think this platform is amazing. I've always want to go to panels, but I have to table at Zine Fest, and I tuned in last week to some of the readings, and it's just like, yeah, just seeing what other people are up to. Like, people really can dive in and talk about their projects and their zines, or what they've been up to, and how they've been creative during these strange times. And I'm excited to see more. You see people posting more, definitely, on social media, of like what they're up to. And some people have the time, and some people are definitely struggling. I struggle myself. And it's like everything's just tossed upside down right now, and like and but yeah, just like reminding, and it's like supporting each other, that it's okay, that like we all kind of feel the same right now. And yeah, like let's all just take our time and to be creative people, and help each other out during these interesting times, for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, definitely some good reminders in there. Don't have to be creative right now and share. Or if you are and that's what you're doing to stay sane right now, like that's great too.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, my last question before we do a wrap up, and maybe see if we have some time for questions from everyone participating, is
where's the after party at?
where's the after party, number one. How would you like to see the zine community and queer community thrive and coexist?
How I would like to see it, maybe more communication. Like, I feel like these fairs, these Zine Fest book fairs, are it's unfortunately, we all want to make a little coin. um and that's important too. Like we, you know, we have to like support ourselves in what we create, but also, yeah, just like communicate, like get more together, like something like this is kind of nice. Yeah, like I would like to see more collaborations for sure. Like just be dope to see like people connect and like create zines and um uh whatever mediums, you know, that come together, like kind of like see more like maybe what Chino produces, you know, is just like a variety of so much things put together in one, and so much expression and so much density and just in a zine. That'd be dope to see more of for sure.
I think you could totally the way that we can bridge people together is you bring a big tote bag to, you know, your Zine Fest. You come with lots of dollar bills. You invest in, you know, new zines. You know, try something different. You know, network and communicate. And you know, what's nice about zines is they're not like, you know, some are free, some are sliding scale, and it's nice, you know, to give back to artists who work very hard on making their zines. And for, I think, for most of the people that I know that make zines, they make zines for a living, you know, like it's part of their livelihood. And to help support someone in a very small way, you know, usually some artists have not only zines but, you know, merch. You know, it's nice to support the merch, or even like something as following an artist that you like, you know, the supporting them online too, I think is a great way to build that communication and those networks. Because I think everyone has like a resource or a skill that they can share with someone, whether it's illustration or layout making, you know, content. Some people love writing, you know, and it's really important to talk with people in our community that spark those interests in zines.
Um, I I what I want. I mean, yeah, if we survive pandemic, I would like to see, you know, that this kind of moment in all of our lives might redirect us into something that's a little more grounded, or that can be grounded in um, like mutual aid and like community. Um, I yeah definitely don't want to knock on people's like um, coin making, and I need to make coin to live as well. But like I hate it. I hate money in so many ways because it's the colonizer's currency. And I wish that there was ways we can like collectively challenge those kinds of frameworks that we've been socialized under, particularly like the kind of like grind culture that causes a lot of us to grind ourselves into the ground. Like my ancestors like literally like have like worked themselves to death. And it's like, you know, to what end is like grinding for money, grinding for like these like white slave owners on pieces of paper, like going to allow us to like really you know, be free. And like in what ways can we challenge those kinds of social norms and queer up those like ways of knowing and being, or actually relating back to ways in which some of us used to know, or still currently do know. You know, there are actually societies that don't base their entire culture from like off of like the currency of what it is now. And yeah, just wanting to transform and find new ways of relating to one another that are less oppressive, and that don't force us to opt into coercive power structures. So maybe, yeah, maybe yeah, that would be nice to see in the future.
So more transformation within it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that so much, and I think what LA Zine Fest is doing now digitally to sort of connect folks online is really cool. And if there's other ways that we can find to connect and communicate with each other, I do think that's sort of the only way to start the solution towards these sort of changing these systems. And I think that's my big stumbling block, is like knowing who's out there and how to talk to them and who they are. And the more we can get connected with each other, the better, and start, doing time banking and things like that are, changing the way we support each other and increasing it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Again, just a quick time check because we're at 8 o'clock. I just want to say thank you to everyone. I'm super grateful that you participated, and thank you everybody that's watching. Really appreciate you being here with us.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chynna, and
Thank
LA
you.
Zine Fest, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you to our interpreters. Thank you to
Yeah.
Honey.
Maxie and Bianca for
Honey.
setting this up.
But yeah, thank you to our interpreters. They're so awesome.
Thank you, Roxy. Thank you, Bianca.
Thank you, everybody, for coming and participating in this. I'm definitely going to watch this a few more times just so I soak every word in. Everyone gave really great input into their answers.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
If you want more information, you can check out everyone's handles, except Cynthia, who didn't change their name.
Sorry.
But you can find everyone at their handles. Make sure you check out their work. And are there any questions before we leave?
Mm-hmm. You can ask your very intimate questions. I'm an open book.
You heard it from Chino. There you go. No questions.
Oh, we did get a question. I'm so sorry, I can't pronounce her name. I'm just gonna call you G. G asks, what made you guys start making zines?
Oh. When I lived in Berkeley, it was during the recession, and I had a really, 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 really terrible job at a copy store. And it was miserable. I got paid not very, very much money, but it was one of the only jobs available at the time. And I would make copies. I would like layer things with the copy machine, and then the idea of zines came up somehow with Tiny Splendor Folk, and I don't know, just started making zines like Xerox copies, and yeah, I would just make free zines back in the day with the copy machines. Like friends would come over to the shop, and I would be alone, and they would make their copies, and I would kind of like turn my head, and they would walk away. But that was a while ago, and I'm sure they won't watch this at all, but it's kind of like where I started with making zines, and then kind of evolved that way for sure. And a lot of partying too. Like we would party, and do all sorts of things, and we would draw on this like table top with the paper, and everyone would just contribute somehow, and like there'd be food stains, and zine ideas would come out of that, which was really cool. And one of our first Tiny Splendor zines was those drawings of just chaos, and like we like screen printed it and had like, there's just like 2 pieces of paper together. But those are really, really fun memories back in the day for sure.
Rad.
For me, just organized political resistance to oppression and coercion. That's all.
The movement. We have another question. How can newer folks find community in zines when it's so overwhelming and I feel lost? We're here for you, all of us. Add us. Yeah, that's definitely a resource.
I mean, but like in terms of feeling lost, like what can they elaborate on that? Like not knowing where to get started, or not knowing your community, like what about it is making you feel lost? Because like I think it's a really cool time too, especially with like social distancing, to send mail to people, and you know, make a zine. You know, copy stores are open, or you can print it at home, and you could send, you know, someone a zine, ask for people's addresses, you know, try to hit them up, and like I mean, in terms of like social networking, like find like a hashtag that you really like, and you never know what you'll find.
They said, like, not feeling artistic enough, finding the right folks. Zines don't always have to be artistic. That's definitely...
Well, I mean, quite the contrary. I feel like the zine making process is an artistic, you know, like it doesn't all have to look the same, you know. I think maybe that's like a better way to clarify it, where, you know, this is your opportunity to like have something resonate. And it's nice that zines can allow you that platform. They're instant, you know, and I think anyone can make a zine.
Yeah, and definitely, I agree with that in terms of instant and just, again, like disseminating information. I mean, you can fold up a piece of paper and make it a zine, which is kind of a really amazing thing. It's so accessible.
Yeah, my advice would be start small, you know, and if you find it, you know, difficult for yourself, maybe invite another friend, and, you know, just do it, you know, without judgment. Just grab a few pieces of paper and draw, and or whatever you want to express. There's no right way of making a zine. You know, whatever you're feeling or want to express is absolutely valid.
Like, this is a single piece of paper, you know. You have the opportunity to make 8 pages, you know, and then it's like a zine.
I think
oh, go ahead.
For me, a lot of like the things that I've been creating throughout the years before coming to zines was like art or portraits of gender nonconforming people. And then suddenly this like LA Queer Resistance zine came, and they were like, do you have any art on like queer stuff? And I was like, oh my God, what an opportunity. And like, you know, through that, it was like, now I can, you know, make art, or like just have art, or have things that I've just been stewing on, you know. And like, yeah, it can be as simple as that. There's a spider in my room. I have to.
All right, I guess our last question is, Stevie asks, what was your first zine ever?
Ooh, first zine ever? My first zine ever, it was called Rapture Culture, and it was a artist collaboration that I did with my friend Eric Barrios, and we worked together at the Pasadena Museum of California Art, with my friend Shani, who's watching. Little gallery attendants at this museum, and we love making art, and collages were things that we did to kill time at the museum, and we just compiled them together, and that was the zine. It was we dedicated it to our queer families, and for people to enjoy all the naughty erotica collages, sex positivity, total inclusion.
It just reminded me of this, not to deviate, but I remember I took some of your zines to it was like a Women of Color Zine Fest.
Oh yeah,
And I had a family come up, and they were just like kind of shocked by the content, and I was like, why are you shocked? But it was funny.
Yeah, we tend to get that, but no apologies whatsoever. You can't apologize for your identity, or like you have to be your most authentic self, and people are just gonna have to deal with it.
Dang, that was like a question that I wanted to pose to people. Like, how do you deal with, people that are like, what's this? Like, like, who are, when you're vending, they're like often people that disagree, sometimes violently. Like, how do you all deal with those things? But we're at the end of things, so it doesn't need to be. We can chat later.
I think that's important, though, feeling safe in that, because, on one hand, it should be a space where folks can ask questions and learn. But on the other hand, if it gets aggressive or anything, that's not what we're there for. So it's kind of like the opposite. Yeah, it is a very good question. I mean, if anyone wants to input. I think, having a buddy at Zine Fest is so important. And this is pretty valuable information too for folks that are new to tabling. If you like, having a buddy is everything. I mean, not just in terms of safety, but also restroom breaks, anxiety,
snack check,
water, snack check. A lot of Zine Fest are in the summertime. It's so hot. Just having someone that you can rely on and feel comfortable with. I get pretty overwhelmed pretty often at Zine Fest. I love meeting new people, but sometimes there are a lot of folks in a space, and yeah, having someone there to really, be there in case something goes wild too is like super important.
A buddy. I remember one of the first times I met Cynthia was at the San Fernando Art Book Fair, and they were running out of chairs, and so I brought a chair with me, and I believe that was the chair that Cynthia used, and through that, we became friends. I took the Riso workshop where I met you, Chynna. I met Chynna, my friend Maria.
Yeah, shout out to Maria.
And like now we're friends for life.
I actually don't remember that, but
No,
no, I'm so sorry. But we've over the years have become really close, and it's been a really special friendship. Having you going over to your house and like chilling with your grandma and like talking to her, and then like going down the street to Club Scum to watch the show and like come back. It's been nice. And like that first workshop I remember was the very, very first RISA workshop I did, and both of you were in there, and it's probably one of the best workshops I've ever given. It was like the first and like the best. There's like the crowd and like what was expressed, and like it's definitely stuck in my brains forever for sure.
I would totally recommend, doing the RISA workshop. It's really, really fun. If you really like making zines, like that is your opportunity to have so much fun with different colors and so many different techniques, other than like Xerox or like inkjet printing.
So I think we've gone off course a little bit, but all's well because positive things. Oh yeah, a comment. I volunteered at Zine Fest to meet other zine makers. That's a great way to meet folks in the community as well. Did you want to add something, Dana?
Oh, I'm just sitting on a ball, so I'm constantly moving.
Gotcha. All right, everybody. I think we're gonna wrap up, and exchanging mail, being a part of online zine groups, taking part in these panels too, I think is a really great way, since everything is digital right now. But yeah, feel free to connect with any of us. I hope you reach out, and I hope that this panel was informative and maybe just welcoming. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway. And I guess we will see everybody next time. Thank you so much for joining.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Mail, zine
Viewers.
swap at the end of the month, people.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks, Ria.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Love you, Stevie.